fishing crabs with a Power Scout Nunivak. This is a test set here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pulling up a crab pot from maybe down 100 fathoms takes a lot of rope, and they spend hours coiling these ropes. That shiv is hydraulic driven, and it's kind of V-shaped, and the harder you pull the rope, the tighter it gets, and it pulls that heavy load. Now that crab pot will weigh 700 or 800 pounds without any crabs in it, and sometimes it's full of crabs and it weighs a lot. Sometimes the pots come up there full, lots of crabs, and other times there won't be anything in there to speak of. So the crabs usually travel in great big schools, and you kind of make a circle around where you think the crabs are going. This is Madre de la Rosa. It should be Madre de la Rosa, the mother of roses, but it's turned out to be mother of sorrow. The father and 2 sons drowned. The boat rolled over, and everybody was lost. They were Mormons. They had too many crab pots on deck and too much water in the hold, and rough sea, and they just rolled over. Now here's a nice catch here. They throw the females back overboard and keep just the large males. Put them in these big tanks, and the tanks have got circulating seawater in them. It's got to be circulating all the time, or the crabs will die. And the cannery will not take any dead crabs. But this is a good load, a nice bunch of males here. This is going up the inside passage to Alaska with our new boat, New Mormon. This is the waterfalls at Buttedale. Over a little to the left is the cannery and a power plant where the water falls, the big water wheel over there, and it furnishes power for the cannery. We were heading for Kodiak.
Other girl, April Bernay, out, and I raped her and killed her. And I put her in the front seat.
And then after he murdered April Bernay, in the same fashion of turning her over on her stomach and strangling her, he came over to the car and he told Leslie Shelley that I'm sorry and that I'm going to have to kill you. And he took her out of the car and he put her on her stomach and he strangled her to death.
Well, the smallest one, Leslie Shelley, has always bothered me more than the others. I think it was because she was so small. I think it's because she was so cooperative. And I think it's because the way she was killed was so...
We decided to turn it loose. This is a big eel. They call it a wolf eel. He got terrible big teeth on him. Now we're on the Nunivak, a boat that had sunk, and Ray got it up and fixed the bottom, and well, we helped and we got him going, and he fished it for a couple of years. A big power scow, beautiful big boat. Ray did a beautiful job of redoing the pilot house and one thing and another. And it's still fishing up there. A lot of nice quarters on it. These guys are poking holes in gallon jugs. They're bait canisters. You fill those full of herring, and the juice and the smells come out of the little holes and attract king crabs. and they're in one jug in every pot that goes over, and some of those pots will weigh up to 800 pounds. So, and then there's 100 fathoms or 600 feet of rope, and so it runs into quite a bit of money. One pot and the buoys and all the rope that goes with it. It has to be good, strong rope because lifting all that weight and all. They're piled like hay on the deck of the Nunivak, and they all have to be tied down because when the boat rolls, you don't want them to spill overboard. You lose a lot of money in an awful hurry. There goes one of the pots, and now coils of rope follows. Down over 100 fathoms of water. Sometimes sea lions come along and they see those buoys and they'll try to play with them and punch holes in them. So they usually put 2, 3, sometimes 4 buoys on every pot. It's cheaper to buy an extra buoy than lose a pot. That's a shiv, a V-shaped shiv, and the harder you pull on that rope, the tighter it pinches and it pulls the pot right up. Spend hours and hours coiling all of that rope. He reaches over with a hook on the boom and he hooks a hold of the pot, lifts the pot right out of the water and sticks it between 2 tanks. And they have to throw the females overboard or the small ones overboard, and the males go in these tanks, and these tanks have circulating seawater all the time. Big pumps water, so it's circulating all the time. If the water gets a little stagnant or something like that, the crabs cough up a little brown stuff and they all die. This boat was the Madre de la Rosa. It should have been De La Rosa, but it's not Mother of Roses, it's Mother of Sorrow, and that's what it turned out to be. There's a father and 2 sons there, and the boat rolled over and they all drowned. Lost the boat and they all drowned. But they had too many pots on deck, made it top heavy, and the boat was so low in the water that it just rolled over. They were Mormons. This is bringing a pot of crabs aboard. Some pots will come plumb full, and others will come up empty. The crabs usually crawl along the bottom in a herds or pods, and you got to stay in that. As soon as you get out of that pod, why, then you get out of the crabs. And then you got to search until you find which way they're going, and then try to cover them again. See that water flowing overboard? That's circulating water coming out of the tanks. The water is going into the bottom of the tank through a perforated plastic, big perforated plastic pipes, and then comes out out of the top and then overboard. Now that pot didn't have hardly any in it, so the crabs have moved a different direction. You can look around the sky and never see a bird, not a seagull. And you throw a little chunk of bait in the water, and all of a sudden the sky is full of birds, and you wonder where in the world they come from. And you'll be out to sea 15, 20 miles, and here they come. They sense it, or see it, or something. If fishing so far offshore, you're out in the bad weather, you can see the shore way off in the distance there, the mountains off. It's a long ways out there sometimes. A lot of pots have been lost. They've put the gear out and didn't know where it was, or the current moved them or something. Now with the global guidance systems that they have, why, they can go right straight within 50 feet of their gear. Bring the crabs to the cannery, and they put them in these totes and weigh them, and you get weighed by the pound, paid by the pound. That's a big scale that we're looking at right there. This boat that we're towing up into a lagoon over on Dock Bay, a little island across, and by golly, they hit a rock and they couldn't get it off, and the tide went out and it sunk. Big, beautiful boat. This is coming up the inside passage with our boat, the Mormon, and this is called Butte Dale, and beautiful waterfalls there. I was going to go over and get a jug of fresh water, but gosh, it splashes out and got all soaking wet, you know. But this was on our way up to Kodiak from the States. That was a nice boat. Made us a good, comfortable living. I didn't need to take so many pictures of salmon, but no use taking a picture of an empty net. This was a big school, a lot of fish here. The first set I made seining salmon was over at Cape Chiniac, and there was salmon everywhere. So I took the Sea Scout and I made a big round haul around the salmon. My goodness, I had 4 times more fish than the boat could hold. So I messed around and trying to save as many as I could, and finally the tide went out and we was on the bottom. We saved about 3,500 salmon. The rest of them swam out, swam away. And big heavy loads there. That's me with a red hat. I am retired now. I have been retired for a couple, 3 years, and I sure miss this going up and fishing after all these years, and being your own boss and coming and going and running a boat and stuff gets to you. This is big waterfall on a Fognac Island. Beautiful falls. Too much falls for the salmon to go up, but it was a lovely place. We caught a lot of salmon. Had come in and smell the fresh water and hang around there for a day or two, and we made quite a few nice sets there. Got quite a few salmon right down there, but they weren't going up this stream to spawn. Here's the horse. They were prospecting for oil over on the Alaska Peninsula, and they brought 14 horses up and used them, and after the prospecting was over with, they wanted the horses back down to Homer. So they sent a barge, an iron scow, up to get the horses, and when they set the scow on the beach to get the horses, it set on a rock and poked a hole in the bottom. So they come down and they saw the horses starting to swim, so they hurried and beat it over to the shore and turned all the horses loose in Geographic Harbor. And they were going to come back and shoot the horses or try to get them, but they never did make it back, and they all died but one. And he stayed around there for several years. Every time I'd go ashore, I'd take the rifle with me, figured I'd shoot him if he was suffering any, but he seemed to be fat and sassy, and the bears wasn't bothering him, so I just let him go. And one year I went up there and I saw wolf tracks by his, and I knew it was too late, and sure enough the wolves had got him. It was a horrible way to die, but that's nature, I guess. I'd a lot rather shot him than watch him getting eaten alive. There's another bunch of sea lions and seals and stuff around there eating the herring. This is the long channel that runs up into Paramanoff Bay and Fognac Island, and up here is where they turned all the elk loose that they brought from the Olympic Peninsula and turned them loose right up here, and there was no predators and lots of feed and shelter, and they multiplied. They really multiplied. There's lots of big herds up there now. This channel must be 4 or 5 miles long, maybe not quite that long, and it opens up into this valley that we're looking at. Now when the tide goes out, this is all open here. This, Ray and I was coming from Seward in a terrible storm. We got caught in it, and that's my boat. Ray's taking this picture. That's my boat there, and my boat rolled over so far, I dumped the net in the water. So we retrieved the net and broke a stabilizer, and it was a terrible mess. But we finally made it ashore, and I dumped the net all over and got it back on board like it belonged. But I don't like this. This was really a nasty. The Barren Islands is just on the other side of me always. I lost a good man over this. He says if I ever get ashore again, he says I'll never get on another boat. So time we got to Kodiak, he had his bag packed and he got off. But he was a good man. Hated to lose him. When we pulled my net back aboard, we pulled it from over the side, and so the boat had a little bit of a port list to it, and we're coming up on Shuyak Island here now, and there's shelter pretty soon. The forecast didn't say there was going to be a storm, so that's why we come across the Gulf. This particular time, there was no fish showing around Kodiak at all, and so they kept the season closed until right at the end of the season, why they decided to open it up a little bit, and then maybe the fishermen could get a few before winter set in. So I didn't even bother about getting a crew, hiring a crew. I got the Mormon bishop from Kodiak and Betty and I, and we went out to see if we could catch some fish. And we did. We got quite a few. We did a lot better than if we'd have been working for wages. So anyway, we're at Anton Larson Bay on Kodiak Island here, and we're going around a school of salmon. $1,200 feet, 200 fathoms is our net, and the person gets quite a few dollars. It's nylon and very strong. Seems like every day we got to wear foul weather gear, but once in a while, when the sun does come out, we sure appreciate it. That's Betty. She's plunging to keep the fish from going around the end of the net. That plunger is like a funnel. It kind of, when she pushes it down, it makes a popping noise, makes lots of bubbles, and scares the fish, makes them go back into the net. We made the circle now, and he's bombing. He's bringing the net back to us. I can't tell just how well I've got this thing focused. I won't know until I rerun it. Jim Pearson had gone ashore and shot a deer, and when he come back to the boat, why, he put his gun in the bow of the boat, and the gun went off and shot him in the chest and arm. It glanced off his chest and went through his arm, cut his arm in two, and bruised his ribs up, but it didn't kill him. And we called the helicopter, Coast Guard, and that's me holding Jim up there. Jim is an orange. He was pretty much in shock. He wasn't in too much pain, but he was. But they rushed him to the hospital and got him all fixed up. His wife had to shorten all the sleeves on the left side there. But we got a lot of admiration for that Coast Guard. They do a lot of good, save a lot of guys. Fishermen get out in weather they got no business going in and get in trouble, and then call for the Coast Guard, and they go out and risk their life to save them. But that's a good, wonderful organization. It was foggy, the clouds were hanging low, and I told them where we were, and by golly, they come right to us. Yeah, it shortened Jim's arm 2 inches. This particular year, we decided to go sport fishing. They weren't letting us catch any salmon, so we thought we'd go get a mess of trout. And this little stream come right down from a glacier, so I got a little jug of water. But where we wound up going, the water was just as good, just as crystal clear. We finally got up to Saltry Cove and Saltry River, and oh man, for the trout, rainbow trout, all over there, and just beautiful pan size. Betty had brought an iron skillet and some bacon and bread and butter, and we had really a fish fry there. Just good pan size fish. And I even have a wild rose in my hat. Betty, she's gonna get a few. Oh, this will drive a lot of people crazy, seeing all these fish down here, so easy to catch. Just perfect pan size. There was a village called Kinetic Village in the early 30s. They had this village, and they'd bring sailing ships in with freight and stuff, and they'd unload it here at this village, and then they had horses and bobsleighs and wagons and stuff, and they would portage them up over the hill and down into the Bristol Bay to the canneries and different things there. So when steamships started running, they went through Falls Pass and around. They abandoned this place, and they left. The people just left. They left their all their cookeries and everything. And just took what they could carry, I guess. And we got Dutch ovens and all kinds of stuff there that they had just abandoned. But the wind blows so hard there, and such terrible weather. That's a Russian Orthodox church in the background. In every house, in the corner of every house, was a little altar, and they made homemade candles and stuff like that. It was really interesting to get some of the stuff. We walked up on the pass and looked down the road, the trail that went down to the Bering Sea, to the lakes and stuff that drained into the Bering Sea. That name of that place was Kinetic. There was an old hotel there. Well, I guess they had to make room for somebody once in a while. But now, just an occasional trapper comes there in the wintertime and traps. This is looking down into the Bering Sea and some of the lakes that drain into the Bering Sea. Bristol Bay. Lots of moose and bears and wolves and caribou. A lot of that stuff in this country. This is Garth Tyler, who was fishing with me. He was from Twin Falls, Idaho. Really a nice guy and nice people. That's the village down there from up on the hill. There's no shelter in there. The wind can blow right in, and so, but out a little ways, about a couple of miles, there's a lagoon that you can get in about half tide, go over a bar and into the lagoon. You can't get out of the wind, but you can get out of the waves. So you go in there, and sometimes there'll be a dozen boats anchored up in there. See the scratching marks or the scratch marks on the film? That's the way it was when we got it back. They might have used it or whatever they did. The wind was blowing so hard, I was afraid we was going to lose our boat. So we rushed down from the top, and I thought, well, the boat's still hanging out there, the anchor's still holding, so I took a few more pictures of the village, figuring, of course, every time we leave, it would be the last time we'd see it. There was a big roll-top desk in the post office in there, and I would have liked to have it, but we couldn't take it because it was take up too much room, and we were fishing. There was cables that run over the top of some of the buildings to keep them from blowing away. The lights get dimmer and brighter. The wind was blowing so hard that I had to finally lay down in the grass and take pictures. There was a shop there that had harnesses and horse collars, horseshoes, and a forge. Everything worked. Things don't rot much out there. There was a little school there. I went down in the bottom of the store. They had a kind of a basement there, and there's still beans and a few things down there. It's a cemetery, and there was no dates or names on any of the graves, so I figured it was Russian Orthodox. I went in there to get the bell, but somebody beat me to the bell, but I got a lot of Russian icons, beautiful icons, gold leaf icons. This is the sister ship to our boat, and this is called the Dobbin. It's not a very good picture here, but it's Larsen Bay in Uyak Bay, and the town is situated on the burial grounds of an ancient Stone Age village there. Their bones and stuff. When they dug a little basement, they was digging up bones and stuff. We're fishing herring here, and this is one of the first sets I made for a herring. Our boat would handle 18 to 20 tons of herring in it and on it, so it packed a pretty good load. Here we finally got the herring on board, and those holes there is the deck. So you see, I don't have room for much more fish in there. The hole is full and the deck is full. This is at Zacher Bay in Uyak Bay on Kodiak Island. Yeah, when we first started fishing herring, and this was at that time, we got $20 a ton for our herring. And now the price has gone up to $2,200 a ton for the herring. And all they take out of the herring is the eggs for caviar for the Japanese. I had made a set around a school of herring and plugged my boat plumb full. So I called another boat over that hadn't caught any fish, and he came over and loaded his boat out of my net. Herring are a delicious eating fish, and I don't know why more people don't get them and eat them, but I certainly, they're easy to scale and fry them quite a long time, and the bones, except all the bones except just the main ones, just dissolve. This, I had just made a set, and I had a deck load, and some of them were washing overboard, and the seagulls were flying along, diving once in a while, getting a free meal. You can see the waves washing up on there. That was all solid herring at one time, but a lot of them washed off. I am now 81 years old, and I don't go out fishing anymore, but I do have a lot of wonderful memories of it. This is over on the mainland, and there's a glacier comes down, and it goes by a big red rock, and it peels off red rock, and the red rock is mixed with this ice, so they call it Red Glacier. During a time when we couldn't fish, why, some of the guys was up there throwing the rocks and enjoying themselves a little bit, and the bear took in after him and chased one guy out in the water and bit him on the butt, and they rushed him to the hospital. They didn't tear him up any, but made some holes in him. He quit fishing. He didn't want it. This is Saxman Village, just south of Ketchikan. During the war, I was a lighthouse keeper at Mary Island, just a little south of where we are right here. And I would come by this Saxman Village, see these totems. So I decided to pull over there and take a picture of some of the totem poles. Met a couple of girls over there. I thought it would be nice to have a little girlfriend down again. So I stopped and talked to these girls, and we'll have a picture of them here in a minute. I'll never know how they stood those totem poles up. Some of them are 50 so feet high. In those days, I don't know how they got them stood up. They didn't have ropes that I know of anyway, but they got them stood up somehow. But then how did they get those huge rocks up on those pyramids too? So I guess they had a way. They say it's supposed to depict their life. They must have lived a pretty terrible life. Now there is really a totem pole, real live one. These poles were all made of cedar, soft and straight, but that one was a long ways up there. Here's one of my little friends. They were cute. They brought me over a wildflower, little wildflower. There it is. There's the other one, and their little dog. I was bringing a big crab boat up, was going to fish crabs, and the name of the boat was Yvonne Denise. And the superintendent from the cannery called me and said, why don't you stop in Juneau and pick up a load of crab bait for us? So I did. I stopped in Juneau and got a load of crab bait and brought it up, and it's pretty nice weather out here now. But before the trip was over, I had green water right over the bow. It was really rough. But I didn't have the hole refrigerated, so the bait was all frozen. So I had to go run night and day to get to Kodiak before the bait melted, thawed out. So that was this particular trip. That's Fairweather, Mount Fairweather, one of the bigger mountains in the background. Glacier comes right down to the water's edge, and big ice falls. It's beautiful, rugged scenery. This was taken in Uyak Bay. They'd come right up and roll over underneath the boat so we could look them all over good. This place called Amuk Pass. There was a big game hunter had a cabin there. This is looking for herring. I was up there in the ice and miserable cold weather. I must have liked it. I did it for so many years. There I had a nice load and called another boat over, and they got a load out of our net. We've got a boatload there, really a boatload. I cleaned and cooked a great big platter of herring. I must have had 40 herring in a pile, and I thought that'll last us a couple of days. But by the end of the day, every time the company left, the plate was empty. Ray was with me, and he said, Dad, if we put sideboards on here, we could get a few more fish on. Well, I wasn't too anxious about putting any more fish on board, but we did. We put sideboards on, and we got a few more fish on too, but the water was on deck. So anything else, boy, we'd have sunk. Here I'm building a house. I sure hope this stuff shows. But I'm building a log house in Kodiak. I had bought a Jeep with there was a little Ford with a winch on the front of it, and I dragged logs from around the woods there and built this log house. I peeled all the bark off the logs, then I scribed them, rolled them over on one on top of the other, and scribed them, and cut down to the scribe mark. So every log cupped over the one underneath it, made a good tight log house. As you can see, how I made a groove there. It rolled over and fit right perfect on this other log. When you get through there, you don't need to even chink it. They fit so tight that you can't even put a knife up through there. This is the 4th log house I built. I'm chopping out the groove now. You build a log house and you don't have too much fat laying around on you. There's a lot of sweat, but I enjoyed it. Spruce is good to work with. It's heavy and slippery when it's green, but when it's dry, it's nice and light. No slivers. On the north end of Kodiak Island, you see the jungle here. We've got lots of trees. On the other side of Kodiak, south of Kodiak, there are no trees to speak of, an occasional one, but it's just a jungle down here where we built this house. Big, beautiful spruce. A lot of hard work went into that, but I enjoyed it. We had a nice house, Panabo, just below, so I had a nice place to eat and sleep and live while I was doing this. I left the logs sticking out on the ends so I'd have something to stand on to work. And when I got through building it, why, I trimmed them off. But by grooving them like that, you can put one log on top of the other. Then I drilled down through all of those and run an iron rod, so there was no way that... Then the top log that went across bound the whole works in, so it was really as solid as no earthquake could jar it loose. I had a little A-frame I made there to lift the logs, put them in place. They're real slippery when you first peel them. I put them up while they're green, so if they settle, why, they settle down tight. The first log house, the old-timer said, oh, you got to peel them and let them dry for a season before you put them up, and I did. But that was the hardest log house I ever built. That was a tough one. The wood was dry and hard to cut. That's a pickeroo, a little sharp-pointed thing you could drag the logs around with. I built the floor first, so it was something nice and level to work on. And there was a little lake. That was a kitchen window, and a little lake out there. And I could sit at the window and watch the deer and the ducks and stuff down on the lake. Betty come up to clean house for me. I'd been peeling logs there. She didn't like the way I was keeping house. But actually, that's only the bark from one log. I cleaned them off after every log, so I didn't have to walk around on slippery pieces of bark. I'm getting ready to put the top log across. That binds everything all in. And boy, it really does it. The pioneers used to leave a crack between each log, maybe an inch or so, and they would fill that crack full of mud or horse manure or whatever they could get, rags, whatever they could get their hands on. But the way I build it here, you don't need any of that stuff. You just fit it down tight. If you do a real good job of fitting, why, wind can't get in. When you put a butt to a tip, sometimes you have to cut it a little thin on one end. But there was enough meat there. I wasn't worried about it. I'm just smoothing it out now to roll it over in place. See, if I didn't leave that log sticking out there to stand on, I'd had to have a sky hook there to hang on to. You can't wear logger's shoes because the little sharp points would ruin the logs. These logs all showed I wanted them smooth. Putting those end ones in was quite a job because you had to groove them around. But the nicest logs went across the top. Those are the ones that went the full length of the house. I let them stick out about 6 feet on the end for a kind of a porch. I regret not taking movies of the inside of the house. I took slides. The stairway going upstairs and from down on the ground up is split log stairways, so an elephant could have gone up and down there without breaking it down. That house is still being lived in and taken care of in Kodiak. A lot of chopping, but it's a funny thing. My weight is around between 175 and 180 along in there, and I haven't varied over 5 pounds in 50 years. I weigh about 178 pounds right now. But I keep active. There's a good 6-foot headroom under the house, and when I boarded it all in, I made a nice place to store stuff that I didn't want to freeze. And our water well was there, the pump was there under the house. It made a real nice place to put stuff that we didn't want frozen. I should have put sheet metal up there, but I didn't. I used 3-in-1 shingles. But they'll last 30 years anyway, those shingles. I put gingerbread, little stuff around it so it looked more like a lodge. As you can see now, there's a little upstairs patio out there and a stairway around it. Made a real nice house. Betty painted a picture of it. It's beautiful. Now we're going to fish a little halibut. Octopus is the best halibut bait you can get. That's their food, and I cut off chunks. Don't waste any of it. And cut off chunks off the tentacles and for pieces of bait. It works real fine. No, I didn't lick it. We'd get a lot of nice big halibut. We got one, Betty and I, that weighed a little over 300 pounds. I went to put one of them down in a hole, and my big gaff didn't come out. And it pulled me down in a hole with it, and the time it got through flopping up and down, it nearly beat me to death. It broke a rib, and they got a lot of muscle, those big devils have. So I working there with a bad rib, and I got my neighbor to come over and give me a hand, pull our gear back. But I wasn't laid up very long. Bound up good and tight. And When you bring them up, if you hit them on a little tiny blowhole just above their nose, you hit that with a club, and that does it. It's real easy to clean a halibut. They don't have very much guts, and 2 or 3 good deft cuts with a knife, and you can yank the whole works right out. Then you can reach in there. They have the females have 2 sacks of eggs back up in there, and you reach up in there and pull those eggs out. And you got to be sure and get all the blood out of the backbone there, because that's the first part that will spoil. Now that fish laid on the white side, and that turns red there, the skin turns red. Sometimes that'll wash off, but we always try to lay them down the white side up. That one weighed around 200 pounds. This ground line runs along the bottom of the ocean, and there's a hook about every 13 or 14 foot apart. And then there's an anchor on each end to hold the whole works down, and then from the anchor there's a line that runs up to a buoy, so you can find your gear from that, and then pull that aboard. Then up comes the anchor, and then you start going down the ground line, picking out the halibut and stuff. Here's one that come up the wrong way, and you couldn't get a good clean swat at it. Halibut is a good fish, good to eat. That's what we first started fishing halibut in Seldovia. When we first moved to Seldovia, why, that was the first fishery I did. About 3-4 cuts with a knife, and there's the eggs right there. 2 little sacks of eggs. The males, they're little. I had been working for the cannery, rewiring it and doing a lot of electrical work, and I hooked up a great big vacuum system. Well, big stuff, and it took a lot of time, and I finally got it all done the day before the fishing season opened. So I left and got on my boat, and the wind was blowing so bad I couldn't get around Cheniac to go where I wanted to go. So I pulled over in the next bay, and I'll be darned if I didn't run into this big school of fish. So I loaded the boat with fish and come back and was the first one to try out this vacuum system, and it worked wonderful. Oh man, we used to have to unload those things one at a time with a pew, and this sucked them out. In 45 minutes I had the boat all sucked out and washed and the water all sucked out. It was wonderful. This was a processor that was on fire at Kukak Bay. We went over to see if there was something we could do, and I looked through the porthole, and there was a man down in the engine room, and he was having a fit. You knew he couldn't get out. There was fire blowing across the hatch. He couldn't get out through that. And about that time, some of the acetylene tanks started exploding, and we had to get out of there. And when they quit exploding, we went back over to look in the hole, and the guy was dead down in laying across one of the engines. Poor guy died a hell of a death, but there's nothing we could do. We saw this bear swimming way out in the ocean. So we got up close to him, and he started breathing pretty hard and blowing water, and we thought, well, we don't want him to drown. So I backed off and kind of herded him towards the shore. And you can see he's a long ways out there. But we got him just about to shore, and then I got up close to see how much strength he had left. And he had plenty of strength left, I'll tell you. Here he's heading in there. He turned around to look to see why I hadn't shot him, and then we ran out of film. There's some nice big crabs there that I can't recall why this picture gets dim like this, but it does it. Must be a cheap television set. On land, they're pretty docile, but in the water, down the water, they move around pretty good. Hadn't seen the sun for a week, and finally it come out just before it went down. I decided I needed a faster, bigger boat. So I took this down and took a little run, had Betty up on the dock. She was taking pictures of it. I was going to advertise and sell it. But I didn't need to advertise it. I sold it the next day, and we bought us a bigger, faster boat. Back over at the Alaska Peninsula again. There's my crew. This was a hippie boat. There's John Finley and the gal up on the flying bridge. He was playing a guitar and drinking wine. This girl come from a really well-to-do family, but she lived this way of life, and they was happy as they could be. There's Crazy Chuck and Dirty Mary down there. More porpoise.